We've got a problem here. We've only got one missile left. I got him! He's right on our tails! Do a barrel roll! You haven't lost him, Maverick! He's still with us! This is it, Maverick! He's gonna get a lock! I'm gonna hit the brakes. He'll fly right by. You're gonna do what? I got a good lock. Firing. Boom. Woo!
16 million colors. Wreak some havoc in your head.
Sega. Successor.
Today we'll take to the skies in Sky Target for the Sega Saturn, developed by Sega's AM1 and Appaloosa Entertainment. So what is this game? Well, it's a 3D on-rail shooter with fighter jets, and it kind of plays like a less twitchy version of Afterburner, but with polygonal graphics. And that's about the long and the short of it. At the outset, you get to choose from a few different real-world jets to hop into, including an F-14 Tomcat, an F-15 Eagle, a Fighting Falcon, and a Rafale, all fully rendered with amazing 3D detail. And after that, you're treated to a nifty little takeoff sequence, and off you go. So let's blow some shit up. What shit shall we shoot? Everything! In Sky Target, literally everything in the sky is, target. Including you! Enemies can be pretty relentless, and they will constantly fire rockets in your direction. I think they established that you're a US Navy fighter pilot, but they never really say who you're supposed to be at war with, because whoever it is, holy crap do they have a massive arsenal, unlike any other country I'm familiar with. They're sending fighter jets, helicopters, stealth jets, commercial airliners, apparently, more helicopters, more fighters, and a slew of giant boss aircraft right at your face. And it can get pretty dang chaotic at times. As far as I know, the United States would have been the only country to have all of these aircraft in the 90s, which makes the whole premise of you fighting them kind of weird. So my theory is your character may have actually gone rogue against the US military. I'm guessing your pilot character was already pretty trigger happy, and maybe there was some trauma there and they just didn't get the mental health help they needed. So at some point they snapped, and now you're embarking on a traitorous rampage. Of course I'm just making all this up. I'm sure there is a real story, but the instruction manual was in Japanese, so I couldn't really figure it out. But if someone else out there wants to translate it, by all means, go for it. And for your rampage, you get 2 weapons, a Vulcan cannon and missiles, and an unlimited supply of each. Fairly early on, I realized there was really no reason not to keep firing my weapons at all times, even during the cutscenes. Honestly, it's good that the game does this, because I have like 0 discipline, and I'm horrible at setting limits for myself when it comes to conserving, well, ammo in games, or pretty much anything else. Also, it helps that the cool destruction and explosion effects look really neat, so the more explosions the better as far as I'm concerned. I'd also be a terrible fighter pilot because of this. I'd be constantly pissing off my ranking officers with the payload I'm always wasting. And I suppose some of the likely civilian casualties too, but they would certainly not appreciate my gross misuse of taxpayer funds with all of those wasted missiles. Anyway, the core gameplay loop is really pretty simple and quite repetitive. You're always flying straight forward while shooting crap, and often maneuvering to avoid other crap for wave after wave of enemy formations until you reach the end-level boss, which is usually just a much larger aircraft. Except it feels like the bosses are actually the easiest part of the game, since they don't really fire at you as often as the hordes of regular enemies, and they have a bunch of destructible weak points that makes them pretty easy to take down. One good thing I will say about Sky Target is it at least has a really nice aesthetic variety to the stages, which keep things looking interesting even if the gameplay is rather stagnant. You get to fly over an island level, a jungle level, a city level, an Arctic level. By the way, global warming ain't got nothing on me and my F-15 and all these missiles I'm firing everywhere. Just give me one afternoon and I could obliterate all of the ice caps. Anyway, each stage is very colorful and really pushes the vibrant arcadey mold that Sky Target was clearly cast in. The influence that Afterburner has on it is palpable. And in fact, a lot of people consider Sky Target to be a spiritual successor to that series. Unfortunately, Sky Target's visual variety fails to carry over into the structure or flow of each of its stages. Levels don't generally deviate from the rigid shoot, dodge, repeat formula I described earlier. Every stage feels the same, and there's no functional difference between maneuvering through a narrow canyon or a wide open airspace, and there never seems to be any way to interact with the environments. Sometimes buildings and barriers and stuff show up, but they're inconsequential as you never take any damage by flying into them. It would have been nice if the game mixed things up a little more and included segments where you could maneuver around obstacles or needed to navigate tight spaces. Sky Target doesn't do much to vary its combat either. You'll see the same types of enemy formations repeat themselves quite a lot. And I feel these types of shooters work best when they can constantly surprise the player by mixing up how and when enemies approach, and pace the waves in a way that keeps the player guessing, and creates unique encounters that help make the game's flow more interesting. Sky Target doesn't really try very hard at any of this. But hey, at least the explosions look cool!
As simple and relatively shallow as the gameplay is, Sky Target, at least deep down, can still be a pretty enjoyable experience. I wouldn't recommend it to everyone, but it's best played in very brief spurts, and especially if you occasionally want to play through a fast-paced 3D rail shooter that's with a lot of arcadey destruction, much in the vein of an Afterburner. Although I guess you could just play Afterburner. But you could also do a lot worse than jump into the cockpit of Sky Target. Overall, I might recommend this game, provided that you curb your expectations for the simple rail shooter that it is, and not a fully fleshed out flight combat experience. Because while I did have some fun with it, it just ain't that.
Doom, 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 doom. Doom, doom. Doom, doom. Doom, doom, doom. Watching every motion in my foolish lover's game. On this endless ocean, finally lovers know no shame. Turning and returning to some secret place inside. Watching in slow motion as you turn around and say, take my breath away. Take my breath away.